oil spill. And you may recall that the members of the industry at that point said that they would make whole all of those folks who were injured by that. Well, the truth is they fought them tooth and nail. They drove almost all of them into bankruptcy, and they didn't end up with one dime of compensation, or if they did, it was very limited. Now, sir, to the best of my knowledge, you are not from here. To the best of my knowledge, you will not be here 3 years from now, whether this plant is or is not in existence. And what I am obliged to do, as are my colleagues here, is to make sure that whatever occurs here is to the benefit of my community, and any harm that it does, they will be compensated for. And of course, the best result is that no harm get done. I am concerned that you suggest to us that there is no risk, and yet all we see are tremendous security precautions taken. Those two events, those two things, are not consistent. I also had an opportunity to observe some of the activity in Boston Harbor during the kerfuffle, is that what you called it, of the Yemen tanker coming in. It was extraordinarily dramatic, and it had a great deal of effect, a very apparent effect, on that area at that time. Now, I know you've done an environmental statement with regard to it, but one of the things I keep wondering about is, did you, and I'll remind you that at the time you were making your original proposal, there was one for Providence. Did anybody do a real analysis of what was going to happen to all the other uses of the bay based upon not one, but two of these huge tankers coming up and down the bay? And I would assume if you were going to be 70, they were going to be at least 70. And quite frankly, I assume if the demand is there, it's going to be more than 70. So what type of analysis did you do on how that was going to impact all the other users of the bay?
Well, we did back in 2004, 2005, when the FERC, by the way, is the one that did the environmental impact statement. We don't write the environmental impact statement. The government does. The Coast Guard leads a process which is called a waterway suitability analysis, where they go out and they assess the impact on the bay, on the waterway, of the expected traffic and whatever limitations and restrictions are applied to that LNG traffic in the context of that waterway. And they did that. They did that for both projects. Then, in the latest go-around, we've gone out and redone all of that, and that involves extensive consultation up and down the bay with the waterway users. That involves the pilots, it involves harbor masters, it involves people from the marine trades, it involves people from Sail Newport. It involves an assessment of what are the potential waterway conflicts and how are those to be addressed and managed and mitigated or avoided, preferably. And that's why you would, if you see the waterway suitability assessment, which you can get, it's public record. We're happy to send it to the committee, at least the public part of it. Some parts of it are redacted because there's security issues an issue there. You'll see that there was an exhaustive analysis, and it also includes a list of all the agencies who participated. Federal, state, local.
One of the things you mentioned, one of the things you mentioned, I was actually privy to a hearing, a meeting at Raytheon when they were involved in essentially a fairly elaborate process of trying to identify, if you will, all the ships at sea. I mean, they were, in fact, for the federal government, for our Department of Defense, involved in an effort to plot all of the commercial vehicles on the ocean, and quite frankly, when you got closer, recreational vehicles, so that they could be prepared to make appropriate security determinations as these events occurred. Now, in that briefing, I was told that several times. One, that it was a security briefing, and two, that there was information they weren't sharing with me. And I don't blame them for that. I'm not particularly trustworthy on these matters. But now you seem to be suggesting that we're going to have this tremendous security precaution with regard to these vehicles. And yet I can go on the internet and discover where this particular LNG tanker is anytime I so desire. Is that your testimony?
That is what, in fact, you can do. There's a system called AIS, Automated Identification System. There's a website.
I realize the AIS, but not all of us are going to have access, and I'm assuming that for one reason or another, not every vessel is going to be plotted out so available to everyone in the internet.
Well, all I know is that we have said we can make that data available to the people who feel they're going to be aggrieved or need to know about it. We can post it in the marinas. We can make it available ahead of time. These ships are not just going to show up unannounced, as people have characterized it. And in that regard,
it would be my impression that they would not necessarily be unannounced to, for instance, the Coast Guard and to the town of Portsmouth. And if, in fact, you were unannounced to them, then we would have even an additional problem.
No,
but I am not anticipating that you are going to be announced for all the world. Again, there's just a problem with all the security precautions and announcing your arrival. That just doesn't seem to be really consistent with all the security precautions.
well, I know that sounds like an odd thing to say, but part of it is you've got to assess what threats you're managing and what threats you care about and what threats you don't care about. And because of the design of these ships, it's a very narrow range of threats that we're worried about, and the people who might initiate those kind of actions that threaten those ships are not going to be, they're going to be tracking these ships' whereabouts. They're not going to need to worry about whether they have a pre-announcement or not. The pre-announcement is not out of concern for keeping it away from the bad guys. It's to make sure that the people who see that as a problem know about it. And as you point out, if the towns on the way, especially any of the towns or agencies that are providing security or part of that process, will know about it through their police departments, their first response departments, through the Coast Guard and the harbor masters. Now, sir, I might add one thing. You said that I was in here and I was disparaging, or I implied I was disparaging the Attorney General and the Aquidneck Island Planning Authority. I am not. I am simply pointing out that they made statements which I can assure you we have repeatedly told them are wrong, and they continue. In the Aquidneck Island case, sir, they had engineers do economic analysis. That's like me hiring an economist to design a plant. And I don't need to defend that, and I appreciate you feel the need to defend it, but if you're going to accuse us of causing problems in that area, then we deserve the right to have the analysis properly conducted, and it wasn't, in our view. And as far as the Attorney General is concerned, he can say what he likes, but if he is making misleading statements, I think it's important that we point that out.
Again, what I suggested to you, and particularly that you have, to the best of my knowledge, avoided certain normal required reviews by certain departments of the state of Rhode Island, Department of Environmental Management and Coastal Resource, or managed to have them avoided, however you want to describe it. And by the way, I am going to ask my commission to take you up, if you will, on your offer, and perhaps invite back some of the folks that you had particularly pointed comments about. And I mean, as well as all of my friends here, are very aware of people saying that something I just said is a lie, but that I'm not a liar, okay? And I've not really ever accepted that distinction. It seems to me that there were ways you could have phrased your dissent from comments being made, particularly when you're coming to present to us. And all of the folks you're talking about and disparaging are in fact people I work with almost every day. And that's just a question of being proper or good manners, sir. That's my impression.
Well, sir, I think then I encourage you to bring them back, and I encourage you to ask the questions. I encourage you to get the data that supports it. I think that's what your objective as a commission is. I think you yourself said this should be an objective process, and it should be intended to find out the facts. And when you're being presented with what is claimed as testimony that is not based on facts and data, then you should be aware of that.